Hi, my name is Elizabeth McPherson, and this is my internal and external communication chart. I went about making this chart. The assignment was to highlight how our district is communicating internally, and then how we're taking that internal communication and connecting it externally, and how we're communicating with the people outside of our school. So I thought it was good to highlight those internal pieces and then those external pieces using a little bit different of a format to kind of separate them. I did choose the Lucid Chart website. I actually don't have a lot of experience making charts or flow charts on any of the websites that were provided. I'm more familiar making infographics and things like that on Canva or um, Powtoon or things like that. So these were new resources for me. I did play around with a couple of the other ones, and I landed on this one. I thought it had the most versatility and kind of was the easiest to use from my perspective. So looking at Junction City Middle School in Geary County, USD 475, um, some ways that we communicate internally. So obviously we have our superintendent. So the main purpose for our superintendent, obviously making these decisions kind of for our school and all of our schools as a whole, but as our kind of go-to communication piece with our Board of Education. One thing I really like that our superintendent has chosen to do is hold listening sessions. So he does these with the community, which is kind of part of that connection with external, but he's been doing them with the staff. Um, quarterly now with COVID, not quite as much, but quite frequently. And so he just invites teachers to come in, sit kind of face to face with him and other educators and ask questions and get some answers on things that are either hot topics in the district or concerns or looking forward or things like that. And I think that that has been an incredible means of communication between the district level and the schools. The superintendent is communicating with staff through emails, and social media is always an option. Yes, that social media goes out to everyone, but it's information that the staff can get as well. Um, and so the superintendent also is communicating with the administrators. Obviously, it's kind of retrieving the school board information, passing it through to administrators, and then having that trickle down to the staff. And then the superintendent also is alerting administrators of any district policy changes so that that can be relayed as well. So the primary ways that the superintendent is communicating are emails, social media, newsletters, and through administrators. I think our superintendent does a pretty incredible job of being the face of his own communication, but I do also believe that kind of he uses his resources and his tools in the schools to communicate. I do believe our superintendent has done a great job of setting up two-way communication. So yes, there are instances where the superintendent has to kind of just relay information. It's a one-way street. Here's the information. Here's what needs to be done. Here's the facts. I think that's happened a lot in the COVID situation where the district level has just had to kind of put out some policies and procedures regardless of kind of that communication back because it's important, it's pertinent, it's maybe coming from the state as a whole. But in general, I believe our superintendent really focuses on that two-way conversation and in making sure that he is not only speaking to, but listening to the stakeholders in his school. So then we have the school board. School board is making those decisions for our school, kind of coming together and making some of those bigger choices for the district. They're communicating not only with the school, but the community. Again, another connection to the external piece. But they communicate through school board meetings and they publish their minutes. So usually school board meetings are open for attendance. Right now they're being video casted on a Zoom type platform on the social media sites, but then their minutes are also posted for public record. And obviously they're publishing kind of policies, procedures, and handbooks. I believe Geary County has one of the most extensive school board policies that I have seen in my career teaching in 3 states and also in looking at some of the other districts in Kansas. So they do a really good job communicating through print and published policies and procedures. So again, primary method of communication for those people, I believe, are through the meetings. That's how they get most of what they're doing out to the public in the school. They're publishing their minutes and the policies and handbooks. The next kind of tier comes to administration in the schools. So they're connecting with kind of this left side. They're kind of, I put them in the middle of this internal because I believe that they really are that bridge between the parents and the faculty and that district level. So our administration is really connecting kids and families with district leaders. So they are connecting with the superintendent regarding key district information. They're sharing that information with the staff at their school, talking about any policy changes, really kind of making things happen at the school level. They're conducting trainings, they're giving presentations, passing out documentation about policy changes, kind of all that kind of things, just talking about the day-to-day operations with teachers, checking in on how things are going, just being engaged with their school. So the administration we have at Junction City Middle primarily uses email, but they're also staff meetings are huge for communication. Participating in staff meetings, being present when things are being said and shared so you can ask questions. Our administration puts out a weekly newsletter, sometimes twice a week. And we always have the team and content leaders that our administration is using to disseminate information. So sometimes if the staff meeting is too large, they use those smaller groups. So then we come to parents and then faculty and staff. So our parents are really communicating with our staff and administrators through school websites, through classroom websites, through emails. They're also communicating with community resources. Oftentimes that's happening through the school district. They do utilize a lot of forms of communication. As parents and students, they're not only calling and talking face to face with oral communication, but they're getting online. They're using learning tools, especially now during COVID. So we're seeing a lot of the email and phone calls, a lot of the school website grading portals. Schoology is what USD 475 uses. There's a lot of interaction and communication via that platform. A lot of teachers are setting up websites or sending out newsletters. Our schools are sending out newsletters to parents and obviously directly communicating with the teachers. And then the staff at the school is communicating kind of between administration and families, talking about daily school procedures, what students need, general kind of communication pieces with parents, connecting with administrators and team leads about concerns in their classroom, concerns with school, positives, things like that. We're looking and reading at those board policies that are being posted, and we're attending PLC groups. We're really trying to connect with the other teachers and faculty and staff in our building. So the big way that I believe staff at Junction City Middle communicates is through email, making phone calls, going to those staff meetings, publishing those newsletters to communicate, going to content team leaders, and having websites. So right now during the COVID situation, obviously it's more important than ever to have those online communication pieces intact. But I think Junction City Middle was doing a pretty good job of that prior to COVID. So now we kind of look at what's happening externally. We're seeing lots of ways, again, especially in this COVID, that people outside of the school can participate and communicate with people inside the school. So we have our parents. Our parents are communicating with what's happening in the school in a variety of ways. They're joining the parent-teacher associations. They're volunteering at school groups. They're participating in community resources, providing those for students. They're part of crisis intervention. When things are happening in their family, they're reaching out not only to school, but they're reaching out to community resources as well. And they're coming to our events. So their presence is part of their communication, and they're able to really kind of engage in what students are doing. Community partners are able to participate by using the school facility. So Junction City Middle is a brand new facility. Geary County is getting a new high school as well. And there is opportunity for the community to use our facilities. And so that's a form of communication and connection. They're sponsoring clubs by providing donations and supporting trips. They get to communicate with schools and connect resources with families. So a lot of times community partners might come to the school, share a resource that they have, and the school is able to communicate that with the families. And they're getting to communicate with staff and school personnel by providing training and funding and professional development. So oftentimes the school will outsource some of those things to provide, the best resources possible. School groups that are in the school are communicating as well with outside and external factors. So when you have things like assemblies, field trips, athletics, work studies, or internships, when former students are participating in your school, there's music and drama programs. All of those rely on external connections and communications. We need to plan those trips off of campus. We need those resources to drive some of the funding or the opportunities students have. Work studies obviously rely on businesses, local businesses, to provide opportunities for our students. Community support groups are communicating. I work in special education, and this is a huge one for us to be communicating with support groups. We utilize Pawnee Mental Health a lot in terms of supporting the well-being of our students. So again, they're providing sponsorships and donations to different students for different reasons. They're offering some program and curriculums. I know some of the mental health and social emotional stuff that I do in my classroom has been a resource of a community support group. They can come in and speak and offer presentations at staff training. They might provide food and advocacy resources. I think we're seeing that a lot during COVID. We're really relying on the communication with our external partners to help provide school lunches and things like that for our kids. Churches, government agencies, welfare services, things like that are all part of these community groups that we're communicating with. Now, one thing I thought the resources provided in this module showed, which I didn't kind of ever think of, and it's really important, is the communication the school has with non-parent supporters. So we understand that there's a large percentage of the community that doesn't have a child in school. So these people, though, are still our taxpayers. They're still putting money and energy into our school and have a stake in how the outcome of student success lands. So these communications with senior citizens, young married career people, taxpayers without children, are really important to make sure that they understand the mission of the school, the vision, and the kind of goals, and that they're able to participate them regardless of whether or not they have children attending the school. And then obviously media. Media is communicating mostly at the district level, hopefully exclusively at the district level for kind of continuity of conversation, but we are also utilizing social media. Right now, Geary County runs a Facebook page. They post quite frequently on the Facebook page. Each school has a Facebook page. We're using online newsletters, class sites, websites, all that kind of media piece to provide information to our family and communities. And this media outlet really allows for the disbursement of a larger amount of information to a larger audience quite quickly. I think pre-social media, it's hard to imagine how we got some of this information out at such a rapid pace. So I believe an area of strength for our district, like I had kind of mentioned before, is really how our superintendent does a good job of listening and being proactive at the district level with kind of one-way communication, things he needs to tell people, but also opening up those avenues for two-way communication. I think he's really proactive and responsible to hearing what people want in the schools. I think one of our weaknesses, quite honestly, and I don't know that this is unique to Junction City Middle, but maybe a challenge for schools in general, is just making sure that we have adequate parent communication. I think when parents need communication, there's a lot of places they can go. They can go to teachers, they can go to the district level, they can go to administrators, and it can get really hard to get consistent information sometimes. So I think one of the weaknesses is, obviously and always keep the availability to improve that consistent communication with parents. So I think that this chart is a good way to look at communication. I think if I were going to critique the chart, it's just a lot of information in a small space, but it's awesome to have the tool to record the audio and to kind of explain the thinking that goes into the chart. And I think one way that it proves that we're looking to engage in student support and student success is how so many of these categories overlap. There's so many ways that every kind of internal and external public uses the same modes of communication and does provide some of that consistency in showing up and participating in all these different avenues of communication. And I think that just really demonstrates the overall opinion of all of these people to promote student success. I think the communication by any one of these categories, if you just put your finger on the chart, overwhelmingly, the goal of that communication is to provide the best education we can for students. And so I think that really shows a connection and a support to student growth, student development, and kind of that piece of looking at how are we serving students as a whole.